Kelly Nelson, we are here on the last episodes of Touchdown to Turnbuckles. What's going on, buddy?
Doing great. Yeah, long and winding road is coming to the end right before the Super Bowl. We
Yep.
did it the whole season pretty much, right?
When we mapped
It was
this out,
great.
we mapped it out a little preseason action, early season,
hmm
mid-season, playoffs, so on and so forth. But when we got here, we didn't really anticipate either of our teams to be in the Super Bowl. I know I didn't, you did, but here we are. Real quick before we get
Yeah,
into our nonsense, Chiefs, Niners, who do you like? Do you even give a fuck?
I I don't give a fuck. I'm not watching. It'll be the
Oh, what?
second
You gotta win.
this matchup that I missed. The last time my wife and I were in vacation in Europe, and we were in Barcelona the night of the Super Bowl. So, and the hotel we were at didn't even have it was on a premium channel, the Super Bowl there. And I wouldn't have watched it anyways. I think the game started at midnight. So this will be the second straight Chiefs 49ers Super Bowl that I'm skipping. But I am going for the Chiefs because I hate the 49ers. I think more than any team, even more than the Cowboys these days. And I do not want to see them hoist a Lombardi trophy. So I'm going for the Chiefs.
I, I do not want this. You know, I had that big Ravens love fair going on with my end of
Yeah.
the thing, but so I'm bitter, but I guess I'm
Mhm.
gonna go the Niners. Just I don't know. I just think it's their year. I think it's
Yeah.
Mahomes Brady-ish, but we're not gonna get too deep into the weeds there.
Yeah.
There's our predictions, Kelly. But we're not here for that, buddy. Let's jump right into the NFL. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, Kelly. The first guy we got here is Steve Mongo McMichael.
Yeah. So this is the final episode, and we've saved the NFL for last. So these are all guys that had at least a cup of coffee with the NFL. This guy right up front, Steve Mongo McMichael, had a long career, 15 years in the NFL. Um, and this is great timing. Just yesterday, I believe he was elected finally
Yep,
to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And yeah, we'll
good
go
stuff.
over some of his numbers. I think it was well deserved, actually. I wasn't too sure before I started researching for Mongo, but then when I looked at his stats, his career stats, they do hold up against all-time greats, that's for sure. So he was born October 17th, 1957, in Houston, Texas. Football measurements 6'2", 270 pounds, and he was a defensive tackle. Went to the University of Texas in his home state from 1976 to 1979, and he was a consensus All American in 1979. And from there, he was drafted by your New England Patriots in 1980 in the third round, 73rd overall, 1980 draft. So, you know, third round, not bad, but
Nope.
he had attitude issues and he just didn't mesh with the coach at the time for the Patriots, the organization. They thought he was, too concerned with partying, just wasn't going to pan out, not enough focus on the football, and they cut him after just 1 year.
It's
Yeah,
pretty crazy for a third
harsh.
round pick to be cut right away like that.
I know. Yeah, just 1 season and cut, I believe, in training camp for the next season. But, and this would be an ironic, development later on, as we shall see. So the Patriots cut him, and the Bears scooped him up in 1981 for the regular season, and pretty much he was off to the races from there with the Bears. This was around the time that Ditka took over as coach. They were coming off quite a long period from like the late 60s through the 70s where they didn't do much. Uh, Walter Payton was basically their only bright spot for several years, the great running back. But when Ditka came around and when Mongo joined the team, they were beginning to put together what would be one of the most well-known teams of all time. So he played for the Bears from 1981 to 1993, 13 seasons, pretty much the entirety of Ditka's tenure as coach. And he had one last year with the Green Bay Packers in 1994. And there you see his greatest moment at the Superdome, at the
Mhm.
Super Bowl. It was Super Bowl 20,
I think so,
I
yeah.
believe. Yeah, and it was the Chicago Bears coming on. It was the end of a magical year where they went 15-1. Their one loss was to the Miami Dolphins on Monday Night Football, of all teams. You know, the only other or the only team to go undefeated in 1972. So the Dolphins were able to end the Bears' hopes at an undefeated record. I believe the Bears were 12-0 at that point. But the Dolphins were upset in the AFC playoffs that year by your New England Patriots. And I won't mention the final score. It's pretty much well
We were up
known.
3-0 though, buddy.
Yeah, the Patriots took a 3-0 lead, and then the rest of the tape for that game is lost. So I'm not sure what
Yep.
happened. But we have this picture, so I guess the Bears won. Mongo is there to the right of Ditka,
Yep.
hoisting him up. And so that was the ironic thing. The team that cut Mongo, the Patriots, eventually got stomped by his new team, the Bears, in the Super Bowl. And yeah, so looking at McMichael's statistics, career statistics, well, first off, he was a two-time All-Pro and a two-time Pro Bowler. And looking at his career stats, I think he had 95 career sacks. So that's up there, not too shabby. And like I said, yeah, he was there for 13 years with the Bears. That whole time, they were a contender, more or less, some years more so than others, but it was definitely their best run as a team since like the World War II era, maybe the early 1960s. But yeah, and pretty much definitely their best run since. So big team there, and Mongo was a big contributor to that whole run. And so getting to the wrestling side of things, there you see him against Reggie White. That was, I believe, Slamboree 97. I looked for that match on YouTube, but it wasn't there because I thought that would have been a cool one to watch.
Yeah.
Reggie, of course, played many years with my beloved Eagles, but then by then he was with the Packers, of course, and big NFC Central still matchup at that time. So after a few brief appearances with the WWF, he was involved with Lawrence Taylor's match with Bam Bam Bigelow at WrestleMania 11, in his corner with a few other players, including Reggie White, I believe, right? For that match. And I think he appeared on maybe a Raw um, as well. But by September of that same year, 1995, he was with WCW for the first ever Nitro, and he was part of the commentating team for quite a few months. There, his commentary is not highly regarded. It just wasn't his thing at all. He, yeah,
This little
it was like yeah, he was a punching bag for a lot of the smart fans, but also PWI. He was just anyway. But he was trained to be a wrestler at the power plant, and he made his debut with Kevin Green in a tag match, right, against Flair and who was.
Arn?
Yeah, I guess I don't. I know I've never seen that match, but anyway, it was a quick one match as a babyface as he turned on Kevin Green and joined the Four Horsemen. And then he would wrestle from 1996 to 1999 and was, a big part of all the peak Nitro era. He was involved in the feud with the NWO, part of the Four Horsemen, of course, a feud with Jeff Jarrett. He held the United States title at one point. He had Queen Deborah by his side. And, he became kind of in later years a meme with some of his wacky performances in the ring. He was kind of like a bull in a china shop at times, but he was quickly trained and thrust into the spotlight very, with just little training, so you can't hardly blame him. The matches that we're going to talk about later, he actually acquitted himself quite well, I thought, in them.
Yeah.
um, yeah, so definitely not the Mongo that you may see on Twitter in GIFs with some craziness. I know there's one with a match. It was, I think, a 6-man with
He's,
Kevin Sullivan on the other
he's
side.
looking all around.
He's all over the place. Yeah, that was a wild one. But anyway, yeah, so he didn't have too many years in the ring. He was done before WCW folded, but he would have been getting older. And after 15 years in the NFL, yeah, his body probably didn't have much left to give. Unfortunately, he had ALS for quite a few years now. He's still hanging in there. He did, like I said, he's been elected to the Hall of Fame, so he got that in. So, yeah, we salute you, Mongo. We'll be talking more about you at the end with your matches. But yeah, a great football player and not a bad wrestler.
Kelly, what's going on with Leo Nomellini?
Leo the Lion Nomellini. Yeah, this guy's interesting. Definitely maybe the most obscure as far as wrestling that we've talked about, as far as like a modern fan's viewpoint. There's only little tiny bits of footage out there, at least on YouTube. I guess Ron Pritchard, who we talked about last time, we didn't even have a match for him. But as far as a football star and a wrestling star, but especially a football star, Nomellini was, I think, next only to Bronco Nagurski amongst the guys we talked about as far as accolades, maybe even more accomplished, if if you can believe it, than Bronco, because I'm going to be listing off a lot of stats and they're pretty impressive. But on the wrestling side of things, he was also a big star at one point, so I don't want to shortchange him in that regard. But first off, he was born June 19th, 1924 in Lucca, Italy. And as a football player, he came in at 6'3", 260 pounds. So he was huge for his era. And he was, like Mongo, a defensive tackle, like a lot of guys we've talked about over the months, a defensive tackle. And also, like Bronco, he went to the University of Minnesota, where he was a two-time All-American. So coming out of college, he was highly regarded. And I believe, yes, this is the first time we've had a first round draft choice of all the guys we've talked about. Um, uh, well, otherwise, I think, or maybe, no, Ron Pritchard was first round too. I forgot about that.
For now, Kelly.
Yes,
Right.
for now.
That's a tease for later. That's a tease for later. Continue, buddy.
Okay. Yeah. So Nomellini was drafted in the first round, 11th overall. So that's higher than what Pritchard was drafted in the 1950 NFL draft. He was taken by San Francisco and he played his entire career with the San Francisco 49ers, 1950 to 1963. Love that trading card. Great. I love those old style trading cards.
Yeah.
So he had a 14-year career in the NFL. And his stats, now we start to get some impressive numbers. He was a 6-time All Pro. And I believe early in his career, he played both ways. He played left tackle on the offensive line when he was young. And I believe he was an All Pro on offense and defense in the same year. So quite impressive. After about 4 years or so, he just became exclusively a defensive player. He was a 10-time Pro Bowler. And yeah, so in his time, he was one of the best defensive players, if not the best defensive player in the league. Then, after his retirement, the accolades kept coming. He's part of the all 1950s NFL team. He was part of the 50th anniversary NFL team. His number 73 is retired by the 49ers. He was inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame class of 1969, his first year of eligibility. And yeah, so tons and tons of accolades. An all-time great 49er, all-time great defensive player. And he began wrestling in Minnesota when he was still in college in 1950. So he was in the wrestling game as soon as he started pro. And he lasted actually longer as a wrestler. He wrestled a couple years after he was done as a pro football player. So he wasn't, I mean, of course, he wrestled in the off season when the Niners were playing. He wasn't wrestling, but still, a fairly lengthy wrestling career in addition to a football career. And when it comes to wrestling, he has a few like major career highlights, and they come against NWA champion Lou Thez. And there's a program from the Cow Palace for one of the big matches in San Francisco. Of course, Nomellini was the hometown hero, and Thez at that time was at the peak of his powers. He'd been on top for quite a while and was, one of the top wrestlers, or definitely of the top wrestler at the time, and at the peak of his powers. Like I said, they had a few big matches. The first one was June 16th, 1953, at the Cow Palace, where they drew a huge crowd, 16,487, one of the larger crowds in Cow Palace history, I believe. And it was a big match against NWA champion Lou Thez. And that one ended, I believe, in Thez being victorious. A couple years later, March 22nd, 1955, at the Cow Palace again, this time before 12,253, Nomellini defeated Lou Thez by disqualification. And this was all part of a plan because afterwards, Nomellini was announced by the ring announcer as the new champion and given the NWA title in the ring. And this was part of this was something that wrestling promoters did somewhat often back then, where they would have a disputed finish, then they would have two guys claiming to be the champion, and they'd have one guy wrestle in a bunch of cities as the champ, another guy wrestle in a bunch of other cities, billed as the NWA champion, hopefully boost houses, cause a lot of interest, and then you would have another match to finally settle things and end the dispute over who is the champion. So this is what happened. Nomellini went around to a few other cities, billed as the NWA champion, but outside of San Francisco, his name didn't mean that much, nowhere near as much as it did in San Francisco. The houses, I don't think, were too great, and I think they pulled the plug early on this whole angle, and it ended July 15th, 1955, in St. Louis, which was Lou Thesz's uh, home, his home arena, home city, and Nomellini lost that match decisively, so that was the end of his claims as the NWA champion. But in the record books, some people do credit him as an NWA champion, and at that time, that was a very prestigious honor. The title didn't change very often, so that was the peak of his drawing power. Some huge matches in San Francisco. He was also big in Minnesota, where he went to college, and he wrestled quite a bit there, especially in the later years. And during his whole wrestling career, he was more often than not involved in tag team matches. And he eventually formed a team with Vern Gagne. We talked about this maybe back in the Vern Gagne episode, where they were tag team champions in the AWA, or maybe even was like the pre and AWA days in Minnesota. So a lot of tag matches, and especially when he got older in the 1960s, he was mostly in tags. But at the end of the day, yeah, quite a career. Uh, Unbelievable accomplishments in the NFL, and some pretty significant accomplishments in wrestling. And Leo died on October 17th, 2000.
Kelly, it's time. It's time. It's Vader time, Kelly.
Yeah, Vader time. And yeah, we're looking at one of the biggest men that we've discussed or will discuss.
Oh yeah.
Huge man. Born May 14th, 1955, in Linwood, California. 6'5", 300 pounds as a football player. Huge. And he was a center slash guard, but mostly a center, I believe, for the University of Colorado. And his last year there was 1977. I couldn't find his first year. I'm assuming he probably was a 4-year guy back then. Most didn't leave early. So Yeah, he was pretty good with Colorado, second team All-American in 1977. Look at him there, so young. Um,
Babyface.
yeah, barely recognizable. And Colorado at the time wasn't a great team, but they were in a tough conference back then with Oklahoma and Nebraska. There's a lot of tough teams. So he acquitted himself quite well. He was somewhat highly regarded coming out of college. The Los Angeles Rams drafted him in the third round, 80th overall. So that was his hometown, basically hometown team, taking him in the 1978 draft. But unfortunately for Leon White, that's his real name, was plagued with knee issues, and he was injured the whole time he was with the Rams. He was there on the team for 2 years, but he didn't get into a single game, much like Lex Luger with the Packers in the 80s. Just was hurt pretty much the entire time. And unfortunate because considering his draft position, he could have been, something of a name in the NFL if injuries didn't derail his career. There's an action shot of him with Colorado. There's of course no pictures of him with the Rams out there. So he kind of barely counts as an NFL guy, but at the end I'll explain why some guys didn't make the cut and why some guys did. Anyway, so Leon eventually got into wrestling, but it was a while. He didn't get into wrestling until 1985, so about 6 years after he was done playing professional football. But I mean, he had the size, obviously, he was perfect for it. So once he got in, he kind of took to it like a duck to water. He started in the AWA. Didn't really do too much there, but he was immediately noticed by like the Japanese, and he quickly went to Japan and got the gimmick of a lifetime there. That I know one story says that the Big Van Vader gimmick was originally envisioned for James Hellwig, the future Ultimate Warrior, and he was offered that, but turned him down, and then Vader was the second choice. I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway, it changed his life as Big Van Vader. He was immediately pushed to the top in Japan, defeated Antonio Inoki in an early match that solidified him, made him a star. He had the great helmet that shot steam out of it.
Yep.
I remember the first time I would have saw him was around 1991 when he was in WCW. He'd come back after he had just one run with WCW prior to that, but he was spending most of his time in Japan. He was also big in Germany, in Mexico. At one point, he held major titles in Japan, Germany, and Mexico all at the same time, which was quite the accomplishment. And then he came to WCW kind of during a down period for them and would continue to be a down period for quite a few years. But he shot to the top there and became the world champion in WCW. Had great matches with Cactus Jack that we see here in the picture. Had great matches with Sting. His matches with Sting are probably the best matches of his WCW tenure, and they're amongst Sting's best career matches, I would say. So he wrestled up until 2003 with a lot of ups and downs. He went to WWF eventually, came in with a lot of fanfare, but seemed to like fall out of favor quickly. And he lost a lot of confidence there, I know. And he had to go back to Japan to sort of rejuvenate himself. And he did. He had another great run in Japan, and we're going to be talking about one of those matches shortly. And went to 2003, and then he had sporadic matches after 2003. Famously in 2016 with Will Ospreay in England, a match
Yep.
came out of the whole what was it, the dive controversy and the whole GIF
Flips.
Ricochet and Will
Yep.
Ospreay and Vader commented on Twitter about how this wasn't real wrestling or something like that. Anyway, that was his last big moment, and he passed away the very next year, 2017. He wasn't that old. Um, no, 2018, died June 18th, 2018. He was one of the biggest wrestling stars of the 90s, that's for sure. During a down period for WCW, like I said, he was kind of, I wouldn't say he carried company on his back, but he was definitely up there, and he brought a lot of respectability to the title. He was looked at as legit. I don't know if that still mattered, but I know Pro Wrestling Illustrated gave him a lot of respect and sort of had him above any of the WWF guys. Um, yeah. So no, Vader was a great wrestler. His football career was cut short, but yeah, great guy, great look, and yeah, rest in peace, Leon.
Kelly, our last wrestler in this journey, Dick the Bruiser. Tell us all about him.
Yeah, I debated who to end this on, but really, I don't think there's any debate. It has to be Dick the Bruiser. Um, he was a great wrestler, actually, as we're gonna
Yeah.
get into. And he was, somewhat accomplished football player, but he was a major main eventer in wrestling, so he's the main eventer for our final episode. And how can you not love the guy with, that picture is just awesome with the cigar. And so he was born William Afflis, June 27th, 1929, in Lafayette, Indiana. Came in at 6 foot, exactly 6 feet and 250 pounds. And yeah, so he was quite an accomplished high school football player, as far as I know, in Indiana. He went to Purdue University, which is located in Indiana, and he played left tackle. I believe that's a picture from his high school days. I'm not 100% sure. Pretty sure that's not Purdue. It looks almost like Michigan, but it's not Michigan.
Yeah. It's probably high
Um,
school.
but yeah, probably high school. And so he only had played 1 year of college ball, 1948 at Purdue University as a freshman. And he was involved in kind of like, if you remember Angelo Mosca back in the CFL episode, involved with gambling, sort of, partying, just, he was a good time boy. And he went around after, I guess he was kicked off of the team at Purdue, and he tried to get in at Notre Dame, I think Miami, Florida, and a few others. And he did get accepted into the University of Nevada in 1950, but he only played on the practice squad. And then I believe the next year, 1951, uh, University of Nevada folded their football team, so there was no team for Dick, or the future Dick, to play for anymore. But he turned enough, or got the attention of enough people to be drafted in 1951. Not very high, the 16th round, 186th overall. We've been here before, Ryan. We've had some guys going, I think even in the 300s
Oh yeah.
overall, you know. But he did make the team, and he played with the Packers for 4 seasons, 1951 to 1954. This was a down period for the Packers, basically in between two like dynasty eras. They had great teams in the 30s and 40s, and then would again have great teams in the 60s. But during the 50s, this was a valley for the Packers. They didn't make the playoffs. They didn't do very well. Um, I'm not sure how much Dick Afflis, how much he contributed to the Packers, but like I said, he was on the team for 4 years, and he quit. Um, he wasn't cut or anything. It was his own choice to end playing pro football, so he could have kept going. And the reason he quit pro football was, of course, he got into pro wrestling, and this was in Reno, Nevada, while he was still in college. And he did a few like special exhibition matches, and he was hyped as a football player and all that. But the wrestling bug bit him. From there, he was a natural. He had a great look, great body. He would become like one of the quintessential, you know, as far as if you close your eyes and think of a wrestler from the 50s and 60s, you'd think of someone like Dick the Bruiser, who was, he stocky and with the crew cut and the cigars and the rough and tough. He was
Oh yeah.
basically kind of like a proto Steve Austin, Stone Cold Steve Austin in a lot of ways, where he just was an ass kicker, drank beer, of course. He was known as the world's most dangerous wrestler, and he made quite a name for himself um, in various different cities. Detroit was one of his strongholds at first, Chicago, and then eventually in the 60s, he got into promoting with another football player turned pro wrestler, Wilbur Snyder, in Indianapolis. They bought the territory there around 1964, and that was Bruiser's territory for the rest of his time as a wrestler. It was a very strong territory at one point, or at least a strong like mid range territory. It was never one of the big territories, of course, but it was connected for a long time with the AWA Vern Gagne. They shared the same talent, and Bruiser was also a big name in the AWA, where he would be partnered with the Crusher, that man right there. The Crusher is on the left with the blood, Bruiser on the right, both with cigars. They were very much like almost like brothers. Looked very similar, wrestled in a very
Yeah.
similar manner, and they were, at first they were a great heel tag team, almost like a Road Warriors for the 1960s, going out there and kicking ass. But then they both turned babyface in the late 60s, and through the 70s, they were top baby faces in Indianapolis and in the AWA. The Crusher, in particular, is beloved in the AWA as an all-time legend. Um, but Bruiser was, huge star in his own right. Went to Japan numerous times. We're going to be talking about that coming up, and yeah, promoted for quite a few years. The 80s weren't kind to Dick the Bruiser, other than in St. Louis. St. Louis was one of his big towns, and that was the crown jewel city of the NWA. And in 1982, he had one last big match in St. Louis that I sold out the Checker Dome, which was almost 20,000 people, for an NWA match with Ric Flair, championship match with Ric Flair during Flair's first year as NWA champion. But after that, that was sort of the end. The Indianapolis territory had a long, slow death. Finally went out of business in 1989, and Bruiser didn't last too much longer. He died in 1991, November 10th, 1991, and it was kind of a sad death where it was like he didn't take care of himself health wise at all. He was still drinking and smoking right up to the very end, and basically his body just gave up on him because he wasn't that old. He was just in his early 60s. Um, but as a wrestler, he's a major star and promoter, 1950s through 1970s. Um, he's a name that, it's still kind of out there. Dick the Bruiser kind of still, matters in a way. Memorable name, memorable look. And as far as football accomplishments, 4 years with the Packers, not bad. Could have kept going. Like I said, he quit. He wasn't forced out of football. But yeah, that's it, Ryan. That's the end. Um, I do have some honorable mentions. I wanted to get some names out of the way because I know there's people that are probably like, well, what about Goldberg? He played for the Falcons. And what about The Rock for the college episode? We never talked about him, and The Rock was at the University of Miami, of course. But first of all, I wanted to talk more about guys that were a little more under discussed, a bit more obscure. That's why I didn't pick Goldberg or The Rock. Um, and they've been talked about a lot anyway with their
Yeah.
football background. Ric Flair went to the University of Minnesota. I don't know if he was like a major contributor, but he was definitely on the team. Hacksaw Jim Duggan was, he had a cup of coffee with the NFL, but I'm not sure who it was with now.
Giants, I want to say.
Maybe. Um, but yeah, it was very brief. Kevin Green, who we're going to talk about shortly. I just thought of it this morning that we should have did maybe one more episode, and that
Yeah.
would be about um, football players that had like one big match in wrestling, because there was a lot like Kevin Green, like Reggie White, like Lawrence Taylor, that we could have did a whole episode on them. But we're going to be talking about Kevin Green shortly. Monty Brown, who's big in
Counts.
TNA during the early years, played for the Buffalo Bills. And let's see, Draws. was with the Denver Broncos, I
Yep.
believe.
I have
Yeah.
his rookie card.
Uh, yeah. Oh, cool. JBL played in the World League of American Football. That's one of the leagues we didn't really mention. I don't know if it came up at all. We talked about the WFL.
I was just say one did early, but that I think it was the WFL. Played in Orlando or
Yeah,
whatever, but yeah.
yeah. So we talked about some obscure leagues, but not that. I know there was a trading card by ProSet of JBL for his. I think he played for the San Antonio team. I'm not 100% sure. Ahmed Johnson played for
Dallas, right?
somebody. Was it Dallas? I was gonna say Dallas. I wasn't 100%
I'm
sure, but
pretty
yeah,
sure
I
it's
think you're
Dallas.
right. Yeah, and then of course Brock Lesnar was in training camp with the Minnesota Vikings
Yep.
in 2005, I think it was. Um,
5 or 6.
yeah, and there's others. We could have went on with some other names,
I also have Brock
but
Lesnar's rookie card from the Minnesota Vikings.
oh wow, he actually got a card. That's cool.
Yeah,
Um, hmm. Yeah, so that's it, Ryan. We went through a lot of names. This was super fun. Uh, you
absolutely.
know, uh, no stone was left unturned here. We went to Canada, we went to West Texas, we went to college, we went back to the 1920s, and then we went all the way up to Roman Reigns in 2008. So I think we covered a lot of ground. I'll just one last time with my references here. There's a great bio by of Dick the Bruiser by Richard Vicek. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Vicek or EK from Crowbar Press. I recommend that. It's a great biography of Dick the Bruiser. Heroes and Icons and the Heels from ECW Press. Used those numerous times. And College and Pro Football Reference, of course, used those numerous times. And Wikipedia. You just kind of have to because a lot of the stuff is pretty obscure. So that's it. Now we got our team to finish here.
All right, Kelly. Now you said we could do a whole nother episode, but we'll get to that on my part here. Let's kind of place the guys that we just talked about. Big Van Vader. Let's start with him. He's listed as a guard and a center. Dusty Rhodes is our guard right now. Do we prefer Vader or Dusty?
That's tough. I mean, I think Vader was probably a better player,
Yeah.
but I love Dusty Rhodes. I hate to have
Then
to.
we can kind of go to the guards real quick. Do we like? I think Buckets Goldenberg would probably be one of our starters. Would Goldberg
Yes,
be another starter over Wayne Munn or Fritz von Erich?
I think Fritz can definitely be, yeah, bumped.
All right, so Fritz
I
is
don't think
third
his,
or last.
yeah,
Excuse me.
yeah, I don't think his accomplishments in football were too special, as far as I know.
Do you prefer Vader as a starter or kind of a backup guy?
So our starting, we're gonna go guard. I think we got to have Munn and Goldenberg as the starter.
All right.
Yeah, because
So do you
Munn was
want to?
the first guy, and so Vader would be, yeah, number 3.
All right. Do you want to move him as our backup center, or do you want to start
Or
him over
maybe as
Dusty?
yeah, yeah, maybe backup center since we don't have one of those, right? Yeah.
No, we
That
don't.
makes more sense.
All right, so that's easy. We'll let Dusty and Vader kind of work its way out, but right now we're going to give the nod to Dusty.
Yeah, they can have a bull rope match to decide the winner.
Perfect. All right. So let's go to the offensive tackles here. Right now, in order, we have Lex Luger starting. We have Blackjack Mulligan. We were unsure, and then we have where Blackjack played, but looking at his size, we put him at offensive tackle, and then we
Yeah.
had Bill Watts, who could also moonlight as a guard. Dick the
Mhm.
Bruiser should definitely be a starter. Is he a
Mhm.
starter with Lex Luger, or is Blackjack Mulligan and Dick the Bruiser? What do you think?
Oh. Well, why don't we go with the 2 Packers, So Bruiser for sure, and then Lex Luger. Uh, like you said, Mulligan, we're not even sure what position he played, and he didn't. He only played in exhibition games. And Watts, yeah, I wouldn't put Watts ahead of either of those guys. Luger, he was with the CFL, the USFL, the NFL. That's got to count for something. So yeah, I like that. I like the 2 Packers.
All right, let's jump on the defensive side of the ball before we get to my guys. Let's start with Leo. Leo is probably up there with Ernie Ladd and Ron Simmons I would say, as a defensive
Yeah,
tackle. What do you think?
I think it's got to be him and Big Cat, Ernie Ladd, 1, 2. The tiebreaker for
Right.
Simmons. I mean, yes, he had a great college career, but his pro career was not much. And as pros, Ladd and Nomellini were great.
Those are our defensive tackles right there. And then we want to go, Mongo.
Oh
I think we
yeah,
should, ooh, we got
that's
Mongo
tough.
too. This is tough. All right, Roman Reigns, you are last string, buddy. Back to the Eskimos. Angelo, you better stay in Foxborough or Watertown, wherever you're from. Pillman, ooh, sorry, buddy. You're down the list too. Perhaps you might want to move the linebacker if you want to get on the field. Simmons or McMichaels. That's a tough one. What do you think?
I know. Well, I think you got to put McMichael ahead of Simmons. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer now, and he
Yeah.
had the accomplishment. And it's tough. Like Nomellini has to be one for
Okay.
sure. He's an all-time great. Now now the debate is Ernie Ladd or Steve McMichael. I don't. That's a coin flip. Should we do Nomellini and McMichael? I mean, I
Here's the thing,
like
buddy.
Ladd more as a wrestler, that's for sure. Be the
It's like, could any
tiebreaker.
of these guys go to the defensive end position to get our best six on the court? Because we're going to play a
Yeah,
six pack just because that's our strength, and because all
yeah,
these guys are old.
yeah. I could
So it's
see Ernie being uh, edge maybe on the end.
because our ends we got Dory
Yeah,
Funk,
that's not good.
Gene
Like,
Knitsky, and it's Superstar.
yeah, like Superstar barely played. Kiniski was good, but not great. Dory Funk just played college. I mean, yeah, let's put Ernie there. I mean, I'm almost tempted to put Ernie and Ron on the ends
I
because
was
that
thinking,
defensive end depth chart is pretty
well, we could
leaky.
have three. Well, here's the thing: we can go five down. Ron can play nose, because that's what he truly played. And then our D tackles can be Nomellini and McMichaels, and we're good. We can get Moscow in there on rotation. We can probably move Reigns to defensive end. Probably he'll be on the field quicker. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think Reigns was more of a DN in Georgia Tech, anyways. All right. And you said Dory Funk barely played.
Well, he played college, but that was it. Like he,
All right. You want to start Dory Funk over Roman? Yeah, let's do that.
yeah.
How about Knitsky or Roman?
I got to go with Gene, like my Canadian boy,
All right. We'll
and
put
a
we'll put
Roman.
Roman over Billy, over Superstar.
Yeah, Superstar is definitely like he didn't play college ball. He just played a little bit in the CFL. So yeah, that's fair.
Cool. And then, all right, so let's wrap up what we got here. Tully's our quarterback. Our special teams, Wahoo McDaniels is our punter. Stu Hart is our kicker. And then that left us a blaring hole at wide receiver. But first, let me describe the offense for you. So we got our center, our two guards, and our tackle. That's five down. We're gonna go double tight, or we're gonna go pro formations, which is a tight end and a split receiver. So that would be our wide receiver. Tito Santana is our every down tight end. If we want to put Paul Orndorff in for a double tight, we will do that. Paul Orndorff could also play a little fullback, but we like him at tight end. So that means when we go split receiver here, when we want to create more gaps or stretch the field, we need a wide receiver. And I went to NXT and I went down to South Carolina and I got Trick Williams. He is a hot rising superstar on NXT, and I thought he would be perfect. He is 6'5". Have you ever heard of Trick
Oh.
Williams?
I've heard of him, but I have never seen him.
He has a great look. He is very charismatic. I think he's a future WrestleMania main eventer, but he is 6'5". He is a wide receiver. His first college football school was Hampton with the Hampton Pirates in Hampton, Virginia. And that's an FCS school, which is like D1, but like lower class D1 FCS. He transferred to South Carolina. Quick story. He pretty much walked on to South Carolina in the spring one year and said, I want to play for y'all. What do I got to do? And they were like, this is before NILs. This is before the transfer portal. This is before all that stuff. So he's a very confident, very charismatic kind of guy, worked himself into getting onto the field. And he ended up having a invite to a rookie mini camp for some little NFL team called the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yep. So that is Trick Williams' origin story in a abbreviated version. kind of right there. So walk on South Carolina, have a pretty good FCS career at Hampton, and then get a shot at a rookie tryout. Philadelphia Eagles, I think he can make our team at wide receiver.
For sure. Yeah.
All
You
right, and
sold
so
me on
let
the
me
Eagles.
describe the rest of our offense. We're going with a power I offense, and with a power I offense, that means you need 3 running backs. It's more of you can do like a Delaware wing T. You can do a power, like a fullback, a running back, and then a split back on either side. You could put one at the wing, but it's pretty much a 3 running back system with Bronco Nagurski leading the way at tailback. We have Gus Soderberg kind of as our wing back slider. And then I went back to NXT and I got a Steiner brother. I got Braun Breaker to be our fullback. Braun Breaker, you should see some of his tape from Kennesaw State, Georgia. It's just unbelievable. Kennesaw State Owls is an FCS school in Kennesaw, Georgia. He was signed as an undrafted free agent by the Baltimore Ravens, and he hung around all the way up, leading until the final cut of the 2020 season. So he almost made the team. Kennesaw State was a brand new school, and they actually ran wing T, which is very unconditional at that level. And his tape is just unbelievable. He's a game breaker. Some of the blocks that he had 4.4 speed. I think in this offense, he would flourish. And he has some decent size. He's a little short, but he's stocky. He's a ass kicker. I don't know if you've seen any of his stuff, Kelly, but he's pretty impressive.
Yeah, just little clips here and there. I liked when he first came in, or I don't know if it was in the WWE or somewhere else where he was Rex Steiner.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought he should have stuck with that name. That would have been. I mean, he didn't have a choice, but I really loved that name. Yeah, great. Of course, he's Rick's son, right?
Yeah, he kind of took it. So his first name's Bronson, right? Bronson, so kind of took the Braun from that. But yeah, Rex Steiner is a beautiful name. I kind of get it. It's kind of with they took away Pillman's kid's name. They gave him a different name. They gave him a different origin story, but they kind of lean on Pillman's heritage a little bit. They lean on Steiner's heritage a lot, but I kind of get not going with the Steiner name. I kind of like Breaker. I like the 2Ks. It was a little wonky at first, but it's just like any name. It kind of grows on you.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're going to go to a personal favorite of mine here at outside linebacker, and that is my boy, Madcap Moss. Madcap Moss was unfortunately released. He is an athletic freak. As you can see some of his bursts, you can see why he would play outside linebacker for us. A 4-year starter for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Big Ten,
cool.
All Big Ten, led the team with tackles 1 year. Had a really good, strong college career in the mid-aughts. And then he had a tryout with the Miami Dolphins as a rookie free agent, and it just didn't work out. The WWE ended up grabbing him soon after that. He was in a developmental system forever. He was a combine warrior. I guess down at NXT, they would run combines similar to the NFL combines, and he just obliterated all the records from agility, bursts, speed, quickness, jump, 4 cones, speeding, powerlifting, all that stuff. He kind of wiped the mat clean with it. He had some natural charisma, but he really struggled trying to find his lane as a character. He's overall pretty average, but it kind of became a joke in the circles that he was my boy, because I was like, there's something about this guy I always liked. I think he's all right. I think he ultimately was just kind of a tag guy. He had some charisma at times, but he overall lacked it. I'm over here gushing about him, but I'm also kind of burying him too, because he is.
Oh, I know. There's some other people I know online that are into him too. I remember him from NXT. He was in a tag team with. Wasn't he a football player too, or am I wrong?
Well, it's funny that you say that. The last guy from NXT here is Madcap Moss's old tag team partner, Tino Sabatelli. Tino Sabatelli was drafted from Oregon State. He's a defensive back, mostly a safety, but I'll describe our defense in a second. He was a part of the Pac-10, and he made a bunch of all Pac-10 defensive positions and whatnot. Drafted by the Tampa Bay Bucks in 2007, second round, 64th pick overall. He also played for the Browns and then later in the Chiefs. This guy had a great look, but not much of a wrestler. I think he's best known for lynching up and snagging up Mandy Rose. So by pulling that accomplishment in life, I think he should easily make the team.
Yes. Yeah.
And plus NFL for 7 or 8 years, and then second round overall pick, second round pick, and not too shabby for a white safety. So overall, I think he's in.
Cool. Good.
But we needed one more defensive back, and that was an easy one for me. This is the one I thought of all along, and it is Adam Pac-Man Jones.
Yes.
Why is he related to wrestling? Because he was suspended from the NFL due to a gun charge, and he was a mess for a while, but he is a former TNA champion. In 2007, him and Ron Killings, Team Pac-Man, won the tag team champions. Now, Kelly, I don't know if you know TNA history, but let's quiz you real quick. Which two decent wrestlers did Pac-Man and Ron Killings defeat to win the TNA championships? The TNA tag team championships.
Was it America's Most Wanted?
Nope. I'll give you one more swing at it.
Who else? The Motor City Machine Guns?
It was Sting and Kurt Angle.
Oh, I wouldn't have guessed that in a million years.
No, not at all.
I was watching most weeks at that time because it was on Spike TV, so it was easy to just flip on and have in the background. But yeah, I don't remember Sting and Kurt Angle as tag champs.
Yeah, I believe they won the belts at No Surrender 2017. So he ended up being in the NFL all the way up to 2016, 17. So he had some trouble in the middle, but overall, first round, 6th pick overall. More known for football, more known for off the field chaos. But he was a great punt returner. He was a great cornerback.
Yeah,
and he was a so-so TNA tag team champion. But
I just remember him throwing the ball and hitting somebody in the nuts with it in a match.
But since our offense is pretty pretty power based, we got the big guys up front. We want to run the ball, have 2 tight ends, a lot of running backs, really gash people, hit the gashes. So we're gonna have a stout defensive line and stout defensive ends. We got to have some good linebackers. We'll probably run a 5-4 or a 6-3. And we're only going to have 2 cornerbacks, so we're just going to bracket the quarterbacks, go free and go cover too high, and just let nothing by us and just throw guys in the box and get in the alleys with these safeties. So we're a little thin in the defensive back, but I think we're going to make up for it with the guys up front. So Kelly, that's our team right there, buddy.
Yeah, not too bad. Tully. It's going to be a run-heavy offense, that's for sure. Oh, yeah. But I'm a big fan of run-heavy offenses. That's, what I first loved about football was running backs. So yeah, that's fine. Defense, we got some studs on defense, Hall of Famers. Oh, yeah, I think we'll do all right.
Yeah, we got Trick. We're going to take 1 or 2 shots a game with Trick downfield with Tully. We'll see with that rag arm get it downfield. All right, Kelly, let's take a quick look at our recommendations. Yeah, Kelly, before we get to the recommendations, I kind of stole your gimmick with the NXT guys over there. And just to fill our roster, I thought you would appreciate the 4 wrestlers from NXT. Give them a quick rundown on their history and present them to you as you lovingly did to me in the audience all year. So I wanted to give you an homage to that.
No, great. I mean, you're the football coach. You know it a lot better than I did.
Let's start with Steve Mongo McMichaels. Kelly, you were gracious enough to give us Steve McMichaels versus Greg the Hammer Valentine in a singles match on October 18th, 1997 on WCW Worldwide in Orlando, Florida. 5 minutes, 14 seconds. And I went 2 1/4 stars, but I thought it was an excellently wrestled match. I thought this was Valentine at the latter years of his ends. We have a few Valentine matches from earlier on that we had, but that was in the mid 80s, and this is the late 90s. So he was a little long in the tooth, but I thought that Valentine's strength of his striking and his mat-based stuff worked really well with a still very green Mongo McMichaels, and McMichaels did well with Valentine's formula in this 5 minutes here.
Yeah. Well, I picked this, entirely because it was a Valentine match. Valentine's one
Yeah.
of my favorites. Like I put in Steve McMichael versus in the search bar on YouTube, and this came up. It was about 5 or 6 matches down. I'd never seen it before, and I thought, what the hell? Why not?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was good. I mean, Hammer, he was getting definitely older. Like you look at him, and he's like, wow, he aged pretty quickly between like
Oh yeah.
1992 and 1997, and but he kept wrestling until God. Yeah, I think he's still wrestling. Um,
Good for
but
him.
yeah, I mean, he was super solid in the ring his entire career, and a perfect guy to put with a green guy like Mongo. And yeah, they had not a bad match. If this was like a real, pay-per-view match that was given more time, and if there was maybe some juice behind it with like an angle or a feud going on, I think these two guys could have had a pretty good match and done some good stuff. But as it was, yeah, it was a nice short little match, meat and potatoes match, as
Yep.
my old buddy Pete Schumacher calls it. And I went 2.5 stars. Yeah, I couldn't go any higher. But it was a perfectly fine uh, Saturday afternoon or whenever it was, Sunday afternoon, C show TV match from the late '90s.
Chad Campbell gave us Steve McMichaels versus Kevin Green in a singles match on June 15th, 1997, from the Great American Bash in Moline, Illinois. 9 minutes and 21 seconds. Oof, this was this was like a celebrity match, but like little amped up. This was a lot of fun. I thought Green was a little more equipped than Mongo in ring at the time. I love how they instruct kind of built in Green's football strengths into his wrestling style. Shoulder tackle takedowns, nice, strong, stiff punches look really awesome. I thought he bumped well. I love the component of his mother his mother was never that close in the gridiron, but she was nice and ringside watching him wrestle. So it was good for his mother to have a front row seat there. They kept kind of playing into that. And of course,
Yeah.
Deborah on the apron at the end kind of led to a weird Jeff Jarrett kind of angle, but that's not about the match. But overall, I thought the work rate looked pretty good for two green guys. I thought whoever structured the match, they worked up to their potential and they kind of surpassed what you would think. And I went 3.25 stars. I thought this was pretty good.
Yeah, I did. I liked it too. I went 3 stars. I don't think I'd seen this before. I think it was the month before that Green was in a tag match with Flair and Piper against the Wolfpack, and that's an excellent match. And of
Yeah.
course, it's a 6-man, so he was protected. But thrown into something like that, he didn't have too much experience in the ring, but you wouldn't have known. Like if you just put this on with like a non-wrestling fan and said, "Yeah, this guy was a wrestler for 10 years." I don't think they would have thought that, "Oh, he doesn't seem like he's a experienced wrestler or whatever," because he acquitted himself quite well. He looked at times. I thought he looked like Hulk Hogan's younger brother or something with the look. Sort of had a similar like the mustache and all that. Um, yeah, he bumped well. This was during the late '90s when, of course, all the heels got cheered and the baby faces got booed. So the crowd was totally, booing Kevin Green and cheering for Mongo, even though they were playing babyface and heel the roles. Um, but yeah, no, this was a very good match. Like I said, I was trying to find the Mongo Reggie White match, which I believe was from the previous month at Slamboree. So they were
Yeah.
doing a lot of NFL player matches in WCW at this time.
And it
But
was
yeah,
working. They
I
were
don't
hot.
know. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. And this was when they were still ahead of WWF and the ratings and all that. I don't know if Green wrestled much after this or not, but he
Perhaps
he could have.
sporadically later in WCW, but I'm not
Did
ultimately
he?
sure.
Yeah, no, I don't recall. He could have made this his full time
Yeah, I thought he looked
career if he
excellent.
had wanted.
For what it was, I thought he looked really good.
Oh yeah, yeah, he was way better than Mongo. Like no disrespect to Mongo,
Yeah.
but Green was clearly the one who looked like a pro wrestler, a smooth pro wrestler. With there was no moments where like, ooh, that was messy or ugly or anything. It was a perfectly fine match.
Some would say Kevin Green was a young Madcap Moss at the time, but
Okay,
you'll take my word for it.
I'll let
All
you
right,
say that.
all right. So the second wrestler here we have is Vader. You recommended Vader versus Ron Simmons in a singles match for the WCW Championship, August 4th, 1992. WCW main event in Baltimore, Maryland. 9 minutes, 47 seconds. I thought this was absolutely excellent, Kelly. I went 3 3/4 stars. I just thought it was excellent. What a moment. I thought both men's strikes early looked fantastic. It felt like a big
Mhm.
fight. The vibe was a big fight feel. I love that the crowd was going absolutely bonkers for Simmons. They wanted Simmons. And I just felt that the crowd yearned for Simmons. I thought the presentation was great. I thought both guys lived up to it. The power move was fantastic. Vader sold his ass off. Simmons sold sympathetically, building to the finish. And just the power slam was absolutely beautiful and epic. Like I said, 3 3/4 stars, Kelly. I thought this was great.
Yeah, this is a cool match. I went 3.5. Yeah, it's short. It was on just it was the main event, I believe, the TV show
Yeah.
that they showed on. It was kind of strange. It came out of nowhere. Vader had just beaten Sting a few weeks earlier at the Great American Bash for the title, but Bill Watts had taken over as the booker at this point, and he wanted to do something. He was always when he was in Mid South and UWF, he loved surprises. So he wanted to have another big black star, a la JYD Junkyard Dog in Mid South. So that was kind of the reasoning behind this whole thing. Big surprise, black star on top, and yeah, but it was a short match. But it was well worked. Vader was great. Simmons was, at this point, this was probably the peak of his wrestling career. And I picked this mostly because it had Simmons in it, so that is a
Yeah.
callback to an old episode, the college episode. So it's great. And now the theme, like we've had now 2 matches where it's all football players involved in it. The crowd reaction at the end is legendary. You have the one fan you can see run down
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
start
He was
jumping up
awesome.
and down right in front. Just great stuff. And then all the baby faces coming out for the celebration and putting the belt around his waist. Great stuff. And Vader was great in this. Um, he was the great monster. It seemed impossible that Simmons could beat him, and then he just got that snap surprise power slam out of nowhere for a quick 3 count. A great way to book the finish because it made Vader still seem strong. It wasn't
Yeah.
like a definitive defeat or anything. And unfortunately, Simmons' run as champ was pretty underwhelming. They didn't do him any favors. Funny, like Watts, handpicked him to be the champion and then fed him Barbarian and Cactus Jack and guys that weren't very high on the pecking order at the time. And
Yeah.
and weren't even in main events, and but anyway, I won't get into that. But yeah, this was a cool match. I don't think I'd ever seen this in full before. I think I'd only seen the finish before, so it was cool to see it all for the first time.
Yes, and Vader's last match here is again from Chad Campbell, Super Vader, that is, versus Kayushi Tamura. Did I say that right?
We'll say that's
In
right.
a
Tamura.
in a in a tournament match, singles match. I don't know what the pure description was it, but it was pretty good.
Believe a
On
tournament.
June
I think it was this. I want to say the semifinals of a
It was the
tournament.
semifinals. I just don't know the structure of the
Yeah.
match because, like, he was just
Yeah.
kind of like
Right.
knocked out. You know what I mean? But we'll get to that in the end.
Yeah.
On
Yeah. Yeah.
June 10th, 1994, for UWF Tokyo, Japan. 7 minutes, 41 seconds. It was an absolute great presentation. I'm really glad Chad recommended it. It was my first time ever seeing this. I thought it was
Mhm.
really, really good, really, really strong. Both guys were urgent. It was stiff. And for 7 minutes and 41 seconds, I went 3 3/4 stars, and I'm not ashamed of it. I thought it was excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a notch above all the matches we watched for this go around. I think I went 4 stars
Yeah.
on it just because of the grittiness to it. Um, Everything mattered, like every move
Yep.
mattered. It was basically, and it was pure simplicity too. It was basically kicks from Tamura versus punches from Vader.
Hmm.
Uh, and I know, yeah,
A lot of
Tamura's
fighting
one of
spirit
Chad's.
in there.
Yeah, the fighting spirit. This is the UWFI, or whatever you want to call it, which was a spin-off promotion that was shoot style. It
Yeah.
was, taking Japanese, strong style or whatever you want to call it, the Inoki style to its like full like logical conclusion. Well, I guess even further was when they did Pride and then real fights, but this was like the next closest thing where it felt more like a real fight than any wrestling match um, at the time. And yeah, I'm not I've hardly seen any of these kind of matches over
Yeah.
the years. I've always wanted to watch more because I when I do watch them, I end up really liking them because like
Yeah,
I
I can
said,
see that being something we would get into. Yeah,
there's something to
I
be
like the
said
length
about
of
the
them.
simplicity. Yeah.
I like the burst of it. I like the urgency. I like everything
Yeah,
matters, like you
yeah,
said, and they just
yeah,
kinda plowed through it, really. I dug it.
yeah.
I would check it out for sure. It's only 7 minutes and 41 seconds. It's excellent, and I love the presentation before the match too. It made the
Yeah.
semifinals feel so important, made
Mhm,
Kyoshi feel important, Vader felt fucking like the man, and it was really
mhm,
good.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think the promotion at this time was on fire too. They were doing really, really big houses and yeah, I think the rules were that I don't think there was pins at all. Like it was just
Yeah, it was
um
the finish was a little weird. It was, like, kinda knocked out, but he got up right away. I don't know. We're that's for another
yeah,
day.
like there wasn't a yeah, it wasn't like a 10 count after the power
Yeah, it
bomb.
was like
Um
a 2 count.
yeah, but I like I said I don't know like I'm not too familiar with this. Chad would be able to explain everything, of course. Tamura I know is one of his favorite wrestlers. He's talked him up quite highly over the years on PWO and other places. So yeah, it was cool to see this. Um, yeah, perfect type of match for Vader with his more legit feel like we talked about earlier. Um yeah, like I thought for sure he was going to lose, like he was getting his ass kicked with all those
Mhm.
kicks early on. It looked like it was going to be a bloodbath, like without blood, but like a one-sided ass kicking. But he came back with the punches and then yeah, like a massive power bomb to end things via knockout. Yeah, so yeah, cool match and a cool display of Vader and his strengths as a pro wrestler, I think.
Yep, and we actually have the same match, but on different decades for Dick the Bruiser. It's the first one is Dick the
Yes.
Bruiser versus Giant Baba, both being 2 out of 3 falls. The first one, NWA International Championship on February 28th, 1968 for JWA in Tokyo, Japan, 14 minutes and 41 seconds. And the second one, again, Giant Baba, 2 out of 3 falls, PWF Heavyweight Championship, April 10th, 1975. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that for all Japan. I don't. I'm not going to.
Yeah, I
I'm not
know.
going to do that to myself and tell you the Japanese town and city. But anyway, 17 minutes, 28 seconds, and that one was recommended by Sean Kidd. They were both very similar. The one from the 68, I went 3.5 stars, and the one from 75, I just felt was a little more cleaner. I thought the presentation was a little more sharper. It's 10 years later almost. And I liked the theatrics around
Mhm.
it a little more, but kind of the same style and the same pace and really the same match, but a little more violent and a little more urgent on the 1975 one. And I went 3 3/4. I thought they were similar. I thought they were close, but the presentation was just super strong. The first fall slow, and then you get the disqualification, the count out, or there's another disqualification, and then you kind of get a sudden pin or a roll up for the win. But I just like I said, I thought 75 was more theatric, and it was a bloody brawl, and I thought it was just awesome, Kelly.
Yeah, yeah, I pretty much agree exactly with your assessment. I saw the 75 match about 3.5 years ago with Steve Willie. Actually, we had a show called International House of Combat briefly, and this was one of the matches we watched. I just picked it out of thin air without knowing its reputation, and we were both very pleasantly surprised by it. Yeah, it's really good. Baba is a bloody mess at the end but gets a decisive victory. I went 4 stars on the 75 match. Yeah, it's definitely like my style, my favorite kind of
I thought of
wrestling.
you for sure.
Yeah, and the 68 match was good too. Um,
Yeah,
there's probably I don't know how much time clipped at the beginning because we're joined in
yeah,
progress,
that
but
might have hurt
it's
it
the first.
too.
No, I think it was just the opening, the usual sort of exchange of holds feeling out process in the first fall. Um, so yeah, it went 3 falls, and it was interesting. What did we have? Oh, I love how Bruiser targeted Baba's knee in the
Yeah.
'68 match to the point where Baba submitted to end the first fall on a half crab, and it looked like he wasn't even going to be able to continue. Had to get his knee retaped. Second fall, Bruiser is countered out of the ring and suffers a pretty nasty gash on his eye, and it's bleeding for the rest of the match. And then we had, in between falls, Bruiser hits Baba with a chair, which was cool because it didn't count as a disqualification because the third fall hadn't started yet. So he
Yeah.
was able to get away with a chair shot on Baba. Then because he was outside the ring with the chair, and then we get the third fall, and yeah, Baba rallies and gets the pin. Um, we've watched a lot of Giant Baba matches over the course of the last few months, and I haven't mentioned the fact that he wasn't a football player, of course, but he was a professional baseball player before he got into wrestling in Japan. He was a pitcher, and I
Oh
think he
wow.
was pretty good. So similar as far as going from one profession to the next. And Baba, I haven't gone wrong with Baba in the last decade.
No,
Every
you
time I
haven't.
put on a Baba match, especially the ones from the '60s and '70s when he was the top guy in like basically like a Bruno Sammartino taking on all the monsters month after month. It's I'm always uh, I always enjoy Baba matches. So everyone should check out if you see a Baba match against an American star from the '60s and '70s. Take some time out of your day and watch that. You'll enjoy it. But Bruiser, yeah, I mean Bruiser was really good. They had good chemistry together. Obviously, I'm sure they wrestled tons of times over the years. But yeah, the '75 one was yeah a bit better, more of a gritty, like the I guess the same year it was Baba and Fritz von Erich that we reviewed, where that was a good bloody brawl. So '75, Baba was just pumping out the great bloody brawls.
Yeah, July
Uh,
75.
okay, so yeah, very close. A couple months later for that
Yep.
one. So yeah, great. I'm glad that match came up because I didn't recommend it myself because I'd seen it before and I wanted to check out this earlier one from the '60s that I hadn't seen. So I'm glad the '75 one came up too because it would have been it's my pick as like my favorite Dick the Bruiser match. It's yeah, it's great stuff.
Kelly, that's it, buddy.
Yeah.
I had a blast these last 7 episodes. We
Hmm.
did our due diligence with our match recommendations. We did our due
Yeah.
diligence building our offense and our defense, and
Hmm.
we suffered through our NFL seasons. Mine was over very soon, and then yours was strung along. You had hopes, and you got kicked right in the dick at the very end, and it was more like a paper cut where it was a slow, painful death. But either
Yes,
way,
death from a thousand cuts or whatever.
but either way, that's the 2023 NFL season, Kelly. And
Yeah.
I'm glad I spent it with you doing touchdowns and turnbuckles, learning a lot about the NFL and history with through
Mhm.
the wrestlers.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a blast. It was something was always interested in doing a deep dive on because of my love for football and my love for wrestling. And I wanted to explore the football careers more, and this gave me the perfect opportunity. And yeah, it was great. And then doing the matches too. Saw a lot of matches that I hadn't seen before that I knew were supposed to be good. So it was a good excuse to watch those. And
Yep.
yeah, I know the Eagles. I knew coming into the season that to top what they had done the year before was highly unlikely. If you looked at the history, it just doesn't happen very often. But yes, it was a painful end to the season. But hopefully, it'll be quickly forgotten once we start. I just see now tonight that Jalen Carter got robbed of the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. It went to Will Anderson for the Houston Texans. God damn it, because they had that hot finish and the
Yeah.
Eagles went in the toilet. Pretty much that's it. Because I think if you look at the numbers, Carter was superior to Will Anderson. But whatever, that just is the cherry on top of the shit end to the season for the Eagles. They haven't had an individual award winner since I believe Reggie White Not counting Andy Reid winning Coach of the Year. But as far as players go, they haven't had an individual award winner since Reggie White won Defensive Player of the Year in 1987. So that streak, unfortunately, continues. They've had so many near misses with MVP with their quarterbacks over the years, but can never get it. Anyway, and the Patriots, well, it's a brave
Third
new
pick.
world here.
Third pick.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking Marvin Harrison. If he's there, you got to take him. There may be, I guess, a trade up possibility. Maybe with the Bears. There we go. We'll have
We'll see.
that
We'll see,
connection
Kelly.
will be rekindled.
We'll see, buddy. We'll see
I
about
don't
that.
know. I don't know what the intel is in Boston or whatever.
It's tight.
But
It's tight to the vest. It's tight to the vest. We're not letting it
yeah,
out of the bag yet, but I think it's either
yeah,
receiver or I think it's receiver with Marvin, or I think it's one of the top 3 quarterbacks. We'll see.
yeah. Anyway, like I said, brave new world, new era dawning for the Eagles. This is going to be Sirianni's make or break year. We'll
Yep.
see. And then maybe we'll take Belichick for 2025. How about that?
Hey, no problem. No problem. Have him. I would love
I don't,
to.
I
I would
don't
love
know.
for
I
you to
think
have the little. I would
I
love for
think
you to have some of the
Bills.
success I had the last 20 years.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, we'll get back together for something. Well,
Oh,
maybe I'll cook
absolutely.
something up, a reason to get back together so we can talk football, if nothing else.
If nothing else. But Kelly, this was a blast. And I want to thank you from the North-South Connection for doing this. And like you said, we'll see you sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
See you guys. Thank you, Kelly.